Welcome to another episode of the Danay Garcia Podcast, treating your life like a garden. Today with me, I have Colleen Weems. She's a wonderful writer, a friend, and a colleague. Colleen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
It's such an honor bringing you here. When I thought of you, we were talking about hitting a wall as an artist, hitting a wall as a writer, hitting a wall in so many, ways that we could totally hit a wall creatively, emotionally. And you were like, why don't you do an episode about this? And I'm like, You are right. We should talk about this and we should do it together.
I'm so happy to be here. And that conversation that we had, and you were so thoughtful in your feedback to me that it was like eye-opening. So I know that it would be to others.
So and I feel like you have so much to kind of give in terms of that, because I feel like writers, it's funny, the term of hitting a wall comes from writing. It doesn't come from any other place in terms of professions. And it doesn't come from, construction. It doesn't come from anything else. It comes from writing. And it's funny how they say hit a wall. I hit a wall and I can't get out of it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like this was an important subject to talk about because we have been basically dealing with four walls for such a long time that I feel like going back to our normal world will feel like hitting a wall. Mm-hmm. And I felt like this is something that we can discuss and go deeper into basically what we were talking about, which is, when you hit a wall, the best thing to do is just kind of step away, right? And do something that you enjoy. No, don't do it because you hit a wall because you're going to find another wall somewhere else. And I just wanted to ask you, what do you think of ways, what other ways you find yourself getting out of that state of mind? That, by the way, I know it's a struggle. It's never easy. Obviously, you're hitting a wall. That doesn't mean that it's easy. But what do you do when you're in the middle of a project and you just feel stuck?
Right. We had talked about the beauty of cleaning a closet. Throwing yourself into a project that you can use your hands and your mind can zone out or space out for a little bit. And giving yourself a little room to breathe. But one of the things I find myself always going back to are, I love books about writing. I love reading, even when you're mad at writing, which you kind of can be. It's super isolating sometimes, and it can be boring and a lonely existence. So having the almost it's like a collegial thing to go into a book about writing and hear other writers talk about how writing is hard, and you're not. It's not your imagination. It really is tough. And cool. Sometimes it's even just one nugget or something, one little piece of advice from someone who's been there, and it can maybe calm you down a little bit. It doesn't feel like a panicky situation. Like, this is it. I'll never write again. Mm-hmm. If too many moments, your brain can play tricks on you, and you can think, maybe this was it for me. But always that the sympathetic words of maybe someone else who's been there is helpful.
I agree. When there was a time that I would, as an actor, I would go to audition and so many auditions, constant and getting constant rejection. And I remember thinking, wow, this is not a normal feeling. This is something that, I'm doing my best and this is all I get. And I remember waking up, late and opening my laptop and listening to Actor Studios, those interviews with actors of how difficult it was when they were auditioning too. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because that really made me feel not alone. And we have this crazy capacity to feel like we're the only one that are going through stress and I don't know how we always do that, but it feels like we're the only one that's struggling, the only one hitting a wall, but we're not. And listening to others talk about it is like our own weird way as artists to feel included in that community without even meeting them.
Exactly.
For you, it was through a book. For me, it was through like a video. Like, oh my gosh, Natalie Portman was rejected for 2 years. Like, what? This is and she's incredible. And the stories go on and on. And
oh yeah.
And I don't know why we always. I feel like when you hit a wall, the most important thing is not to be afraid of it, but to look for help or for inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I clean too. I am a crazy cleaner it makes me feel like I have something under control. Especially when others come to the house, they're like, oh, everything's so clean. I'm like, thank you. Thank you so much.
This is the tangible result of my writer's block.
Yeah, this is when you hit a wall. Like everything turns magically clean. And it's so reassuring to feel like I feel like it's a way to do something you like and that you have control over it. And Colleen, tell us a little bit about how you discover writing in your life. Like how do you, because it's not easy. You've done it for a while. Obviously, it's important enough to keep pursuing it. And you have come through so many walls already. So what made you start this career and what keeps you going?
I started as a little kid. I loved to read and I loved television. I watched a lot of it. And so it's just, was always drawn to storytelling and would love, I tried writing a book in 4th grade about twins who switched places, I think was my first attempt. But
I love it.
And then later in elementary school, I won a writing contest and I think it was about patriotism or something like that. And I got affirmation that, oh, you were good at this, good enough to win something. And it obviously caught my attention. And so I kind of kept at it. And I found it really fun and rewarding. And then I studied journalism in school and found ways to write about all kinds of things other than, just diary sorts of things or letters or I used to write plays and it has just been it's a torture and a joy, like probably the best things are. But I always came back to it. I mean, I've had a number of different like professional ways to connect to writing. This whole, since school, and it's I figure as long as it's still fun and feeds you, even though it can be torture, keep going, I guess.
Keep going, I guess.
Keep going.
Do you feel like writing has evolved or changed or digressed with technology? Because everything has to be written in order for us to find something. Or probably the best question is, do you feel like people read more or writing has evolved into a better way of for us to capture that whatever message is? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's definitely changed, and I think in a lot of ways for the better, and a lot of ways for the worse. But it's definitely changed. There are so many more acceptable ways to write now. I mean, really kind of out there, new approaches to
storytelling, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That aren't, formulaic or so formal, and there's a lot more play, I think, with words and how you put them together. And that part's been so fun to watch.
To me, growing up, books were like a form of like education. Like it's huge. You don't spend time reading something that you're not going to get something from it. Now I feel like readers read and really don't get anything from it other than just like it's very strange form of entertainment.
Yeah.
Sometimes they actually said it, that they are like, oh, I just want to escape. And I was just reading whatever. And I'm like, wow, that's a way to, who's writing this first? And you are the consumer. It's really like watching a reality show, or reading a reality show, not really thinking. so much. It's more like an entertainment. It's a form of entertainment that we never, I feel like it's a new thing. It's a new level of writing, right?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, probably a lot of what we're consuming is just like, content that's being pushed at us. But even in there among the content, you've got like, there's some great writing that's happening out there.
Totally.
And it's like a new platform for someone who maybe doesn't want to do long form, or, it's the perfect platform for a lot of writers. And I think people will find the great there too, that they really like. Yeah.
It's
I mean,
true.
Of course, I always want people to read books. I mean,
yeah, it's one of the, it's, I feel like whoever reads book, it's like a relationship you have with an intangible world that the writer writes, but a tangible thing because it's in a book. So it's like this connection between the intangible, which is the story, and the tangible, which is the book that you purchase, that you buy, that you see the letters. It's like, it's such a great connection. I love to read. I mean, I read everything I can. Mm-hmm. Actually, my job is reading stories. So it's, I always find myself in that connection with myself and with this imaginary world that is that story. That sometimes takes you away, and sometimes you're like, oh my God, I can't put this down. And it's exciting. I have great respect for writers because, to create that, it's hard. It's challenging. I'm not surprised, but we were talking about hitting a wall. Like, you're obviously creating a crazy story. Like it's normal. Yeah. And, and another thing about hitting the wall is the fact that, as you are like dealing with something so profound and you care about, when you step away and do something else, you feel kind of guilty that you're not finishing this project that is so important.
It's like having homework 24 hours a day.
Yeah. And I feel that happens to so many people, not just in writings, to anything. Like, I just found someone at the grocery store and they're like, oh, I'm just doing this because I can't finish my project. But they're like all frustrated. I'm like, well, let's just take it as like, hey, let's get this to be, to eat later. Like, this is good. Like, just buy something you like. And if I feel like people, we don't know how to deal with understanding the fact that we don't have to finish everything right when we think we have to finish it. We don't give ourselves the permission to stop and to be okay with that. I feel like we're living a world that it's so, you have to be crazy productive in order to feel okay, when in fact sometimes it's very productive to stop, right?
To stop. Yeah. I mean, that kind of intense focus on anything. I mean, you can feel almost the pressure build inside your body. Yeah. And I imagine, like, the way I imagine it, it's your pressure's building on whatever project it is too. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't, you're not giving it the space to grow either. Yeah. So that space, like, where you just let go and let it maybe take on a different shape after you've been holding on to it so tightly. It has to be healthy for it. I mean, but the guilt is there when you step away, like, oh, what's happening?
Mm-hmm. I don't get it.
I don't get it. What's wrong with me? And sometimes the space is 10 minutes and sometimes it's 10 days or 10 months. And I've heard for some people it's 10 years. I mean, you can put a project away that wasn't ready and come back to it years later and it has new life. So I try to remember that too. Like, it's still going to be there.
Yeah. And that's another thing, this kind of jobs are really hard. And we are always struggling every time we start a new project. And it's a struggle and it's not easy. Like, every time you start a new book, we were talking about that. It's like, oh my God, it's like starting from the beginning, something again, which you are. But what we don't realize with the amount of pressure we put on ourselves is that we already have so many tools to overcome things. Right. And we think that we don't have it, that we're powerless, when in fact, we're so ahead because we have overcome so many obstacles in the past, but it feels so hard at the beginning that it's like if like you're powerless, right?
Yeah. And it's so huge. I mean, you win by having an idea. Even just the idea is like such a victory. And so you carry that momentum as far as you can. But when you actually have to sit down, you've got the blank page in front of you. It's just feels huge. And that's when you have to start chunking it down into little achievable goals. I need to get a page done. If you're really in a bad spot, I need to get maybe a sentence done or a paragraph done.
Oh, wow.
Or if you can't do that, then yes, step away, go clean a closet.
Yes.
Bake a cake.
What would you do? What would you tell someone that is afraid to start writing?
That's a great question.
Like,
remind yourself that nobody has to see what you're writing. I mean, a lot of times it's you're imagining this audience that is maybe frowning at you or like mad at what you've written, and you're trying to please someone who really doesn't exist. So let them go and just come up with the craziest thing you can think of that people would think you've lost it if you started writing about it, and write about that, knowing that nobody is going to see it or has to see it. It's just for you. And once you kind of get that momentum of that loose feeling of writing, and if you can ever get in the flow when you're writing, that is, you don't stop if you're in the flow. And just have fun with it. I mean, because that's, I think, why people keep doing it is it's fun, and it is some part of your brain that I think hits that joy button sometimes. And if you're drawn to writing, I think that says a lot. If you have some desire in you to put words to paper, you have to pay attention to it.
True. It's important.
Yeah.
I love what you said. I feel like letting go of other people's judging your idea, other people thinking that what you're writing is crazy or wrong, or that you're crazy because you're the writer. Like, how dare you?
Yeah.
I feel like it liberates you. It liberates your mind to explore in places, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you finally finish that story and you got liberated while writing it? What do you do when you share it to others? Like, how do you handle now something that you want to share or that somebody's looking forward to?
Yeah, that is, like, I mean, it's...
What do you do?
It's the most vulnerable thing I think I ever do, is that that moment when you release it, I read it 7,000 times before I give it to anyone. I edit it. I love editing just as much as I love writing, maybe more.
Interesting.
And that also is very freeing too, is knowing that, like, oh, it's terrible now, but I can fix it later.
Cool.
You don't have to labor over every single word. You can just go for it. But before it goes to somebody, I just, probably very, you don't have to, it's a lot of permission giving for the other person to, because it's a lot of pressure to read something of someone else's too. When you're either one of the few or the first to read something from someone else.
It's true.
So trying to give them the permission that, maybe it'll connect with you, maybe it won't. You have to really, really be ready for someone's opinion also. And that can be hard if it's been your baby for a little bit.
Of course.
I always try to remind myself once it leaves, it belongs to the reader, right? I mean, they're going to bring their own story to the piece. They're going to bring their own opinions to whatever you're writing. And that's great. Like, I've written things and people have gotten messages or signs out of something that I never would have intended.
That's awesome.
Not that it was bad, but I just never thought about it. And people got their own ideas, and that's like such an honor.
Yeah, it connects. It's that relationship the reader has with a story that somebody wrote at a completely different time that you don't even know about. And then you feel so connected to that intangible thing that is in page, that it's so deep and profound. But at the same time, it's like, oh my God, this author was like 100 years ago, or it's happening now, or like it's that energy that that person put that never goes away. And we all interpret that in so many ways, right?
An infinite number of ways. Yeah. It's really mind blowing that it becomes one story can become 10 million stories.
That's so insane. Depend on the mind. Whoever.
Depending on the mind. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So you have to be ready to kind of let that go.
Right.
So how could you let that go completely, knowing that you wrote something with an intention?
I mean, I guess you never really let it go completely. It's hard. I mean, it's hard. I mean, and writers are probably, I don't know, people who make art or make anything. Mm-hmm. There's got to be a sensitivity there, I think, that is just a common denominator. And so we try to be hardened and cool about it, nonchalant, but I think there's always a piece that is shy or insecure or nervous, or because it means something.
It does.
You wouldn't have taken all those hours and put yourself out there if it didn't mean anything to you. And so, and maybe that's a good hurt if it doesn't connect with someone else.
You know, when something doesn't go your way, like when you write something you don't like, when you write something you need to like, oh, I can't do this. It really has a lot to do with your taste, with what you like as Colleen, as you as a person. And I always try to remind this to myself, like when I'm not happy with something, that I'm not happy because I have a taste of what I would like to do, but I didn't get there.
Right.
Now we always get so impatient when we don't get there, and that has to do with time, hours, experience, to get there, to understand what it takes to deliver something with good taste. Yeah. And the only way you understand the difference is by being exposed to tasteful stories, like things that are at the top of their game. You're going to naturally want to imitate that, or like try to connect to that level of tasteful, like of stories. And we briefly talked that you have always been exposed to like good storytelling. Like you watch Kramer versus Kramer when you're like 5.
It's like, 5 or 6. I was a little kid.
It's like, there's like some deep storytelling to like.
Yeah, nothing was off. My parents they loved movies and they loved books. And I think my dad would give me these books that were just big. They would take me and I would see any movie that they were seeing. I watched a lot of adult television, not adult television.
Complicated stories.
10 o'clock hour, I was watching television with them. Yeah, complicated stories, people with like grown-up problems. I'm just this little kid here. But I loved all of it. And I kind of, you start picturing yourself as an adult and what that might be like. And, but yeah, it was, and when you were talking about like kind of the taste and frustrating, I mean, because it's possible now when you're exposed to that greatness, it can be achieved.
It's achieved. Yes.
You want to achieve it too. Or if you've done something, you keep stretching yourself that way. And I mean, you're not going to nail it every time.
No.
You desperately want to. You desperately want to nail it every time. But, so you go back and try it again, or you fix it.
Yeah.
Keep trying.
Do you think your parents exposed you to so much stories because they saw something in you that was connected to that, or it was pure accident? Or
maybe, I mean, that was just, I always like something they shared together too. I mean, that was cute. Something they enjoyed. It was the movie like Napoleon Dynamite. I don't know if you remember that movie.
Yes.
So my parents were much older and at the time, and none of us had ever heard of this movie. And they were like there with all these things. They were just always ahead of the curve on like funky movies, funky shows. They gave Napoleon Dynamite to everyone at Christmas. And they were just like so ahead of all of us. And they weren't necessarily artists or storytellers themselves, but they just loved it. It brought them so much happiness and so much joy and like such a shared, and it was a shared experience for our family too. I think that was, my brother's a big movie buff, and
I'm sure
it was just so much fun. That's what we, I think, did together. So it's not a
surprise you're a writer.
Yeah. So there was a lot of joy around it, and they loved reading what I wrote and
Oh,
got a kick
nice.
out of it. So it was, I think, because the origins of that are maybe in such a happy place that
Yeah, it's you
kept us going.
gravitate toward that.
Yeah,
It's natural. Did you do that with your kids in terms of
yeah,
stories and
yeah.
movies and just exposure to things?
Oh yeah. And it's something that we do together. We talk about it all the time and share,
That's awesome.
they of course they're young men now. So
Mhm.
they have different resources of what's new and cool. And they try to help their mom out. But my older son, when he, moved out of the house the first time, I gave him a long list of movies that he should watch. I think he's like
That's so
slowly
cute.
like trying to tackle the list, but
Yeah, it's something that keeps us connected, and that's why when I remember when I was acting, I started watching what I did, and I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is not what I intended to do." Because what I was doing I thought I was delivering something close to this kind of emotion, but what was captured was completely different, and it was extremely frustrating, even if I was feeling it. And that was that. So anybody, and this conversation is so important because people quit doing things. Writers quit writing because they don't like what they write.
mhm.
Actors quit acting. So many people quit doing their stuff because they don't like it at first. And these conversations are important because you have to expose yourself around really good content if you're a writer. You have to, if you're an actor, really good, acting, which is available everywhere on YouTube, anywhere.
Yeah.
Research old actors, old writers, whatever it is that you do in life. It's always good to go back to the beginning of how this even thing was invented or why, right? And what has done to the society too. Like I feel books have changed our world. I mean, we have changed the way we live based on things that we discovered from years ago in a book, you
Right.
know? And I do think that, going back in time really helps us keep moving forward.
Yeah. I think,
Um,
and you're right. And the detriment for how things are now, it just is so fast.
yes,
And none of this is a fast process. And
it's
I
never
think
been.
people, yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't do it great in the first day or week or something, I mean, I can see where it would be easy to. I mean, I quit baking bread after I had one bad loaf. I was like, forget it. I'm gonna quit. But yeah, it's long and you have to.
It's long, it's lonely, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It takes days of like figuring it out and a lot of cleaning in between,
So much
just a
cleaning.
lot of cleaning and washing in between. And it's like, it's important to send this kind of messages out there because
Mhm.
it's such a shame that great talented people quit because they don't have that instant gratification.
Right. Yeah, you
And
don't have the
we
instant
need
praise or the instant
resilient
attention.
people. We need them.
Mhm.
We need to let them know that it takes a lot of just being resilient, right?
Yeah. And going back to like you said, looking back, but also looking back to how you started
Of
in the
course.
first place. Um, why, did you pick up a pen so people would know your name, or did you pick up a pen because you had something to say, or, and
Yeah, the whys are important. Why are you
mhm.
doing this? Because it's if you don't have that figured out, then it's easy to quit,
Yeah. Oh
right?
yeah.
It's like my question to you, like what keeps you going? And you're like, because it's it just felt right and but it's lonely and it's this and it's that. It's like, yeah, it's so the tool that this episode is all about finding those tools to keep you being resilient,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
keep
And know that you're not alone. I mean, you
no.
feel alone, but you're really not alone.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. You're a writer that doesn't look for writer's room
Mhm.
or because that's another thing. Some people they cannot go through, in a circle and having people read their stuff as they are creating it,
Right.
right? You're someone that is more like look for books of people that are writers and it's like a more like a one-on-one experience, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a one. Yeah, exactly. One way. And it just depends on who you are, I think, as a person and what works for you. I mean, people love writers groups and the most amazing work has come from workshopping something in a writer's group. And I have found that I love writing in a, love, it's hard when you do feel lonely, but in a silo where you can just trust your voice. And, I write, but my voice is, I think I've been with it for so long now that I have finally got to a place where I can trust it. I mean, there's editing and feedback and things that will come later, but inviting too many other opinions in too early, I feel it takes my work in a direction that doesn't feel natural to me.
It makes perfect sense. And that's the beauty of this too. Like you pick and choose what works for you. When you pick a project, Colleen, like when you pick a book, what makes you say, I want to pursue this message or this story? Why this and not that? What is that one thing? Because I feel like everybody has that issue too.
Yeah. And it's so intangible, I think. It's
totally.
It's got to be an idea you love, because you're going to be stuck with it for a long time. Time. And it has to be something you're curious about, that you kind of can't stop thinking about. It's always fun. Like if you're laying in bed, you wake up thinking about it, or you come up with a new idea. It's just kind of clawing away back there. It just has to be something that is so fun for you and that you want to read. You're going to read it 1,000 times, if not more. So it has to grab your attention and your curiosity, I think, in a way that nothing else does. And so those ideas don't come every day.
Yes.
So if you get one, you kind of know when it's a wow idea. And then sometimes,
really? And you feel it, right?
You feel it. I mean, my biggest ideas have come from in these moments. Like one, the book, the ifs, the idea for the ifs and the concept there is adults who social media falls out of favor, and this certain group of like young adults who were raised on it are having trouble socializing. So they develop a community of imaginary friends. Adults are adults with imaginary friends, and it kind of becomes the norm for them to have imaginary friends. And so that came to me in a dream. And
in a dream, like for real, while sleeping?
For real while sleeping. And I couldn't stop thinking of it. And the exact group that I was picturing was the kids now who were born in the year 2000, which was my older son. And, I was watching them when they'd get together and they would all be on their phones. And that was how they socialized, was they would just each be staring into their phone.
Wow.
So then once you kind of lock onto that, signs start, it felt like this process. Little signs started popping up right in front of me, ideas that started building and growing together into the novel. So that part was a dream. That doesn't happen after that, though. I paid very close attention to my dreams to see if there would be
So ideas, they can't even come while you're dreaming. That's incredible.
Yeah. It's that was a lot of fun.
That's like your subconscious mind talking a little bit, like asking you to wake up. I'm right.
Yeah, pay attention. I did. I took a couple of notes.
That's so funny. So. That's crazy. Do you feel that the pandemic changed your approach in writing and the subjects you kind of talk about after this, our lives kind of changed? Do you feel like that it just changed your stories or how you see them?
I think so. I mean, it definitely got maybe a little darker and less lighthearted. Darker, weirder, stranger, because it reflects the world. The world started to feel very strange and foreign and scary and unpredictable, really, truly unpredictable It's always been unpredictable, but that, we have this illusion level that it was we knew what was going to happen, just generally in life and how the rhythm of the world is. And that was off the table.
Totally.
And so it just felt like a jarring difference. And so that I did notice that started to come out in strange characters. And, but then we saw it on TV too, right? I mean,
yes, then it became an international
everyone
situation.
Was getting a little strange.
Yeah. Then it became everywhere. It was just we were reacting to like a phenomenon in so many ways.
Yeah.
And even for me as, working on an apocalypse, which is like so weird to like stop work to deal with another apocalypse in an unknown world, which is what kind of defines an apocalypse, which is like everything changed to something else. And it was very, very strange. And it changed the way I looked. I even looked at my character returning to work, for sure. Even the world that we put on hold to deal with our personal issues in life, returning to that world felt different. And it was very strange. So I always wonder with musicians and, writers, any sort of creation, even doctors, like, the way they go back to work now, it's a different experience because they just were pushed to the extreme, I think, in their profession. So what I've been getting is that, yes, it's reflected differently in my work for sure.
Well, you had a new life experience of an actual apocalypse that you could give to your character, it sounds like. I mean.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing about looking for toilet paper was very odd. I mean, it was just like, wow, I didn't see this one coming. Those things that it just sparked your imagination. You're like, I never thought this could happen. Like this exchange,
And that was probably a crazy scenario that didn't even come up in your show, right?
No, I went back to the writers. I'm like, I literally went back to the writers. I'm like, can we include a toilet paper somewhere? Like, can we just do we care about a toilet paper in this apocalypse?
Yeah. What kind of world is it? Is it the world without toilet paper or with toilet paper?
Yeah. And it's just those little things that you learn along the way. And it really goes down to like people's imagination too. Like people worry about this and they worried about that. And it's like it's really what, we have to pay attention. Like where are we at in our mental health, state with what we've been dealing with. It's just very interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, and we were all affected in such different ways. And I mean, I didn't feel very creative during the worst of it. It would have been a great time to write. You have a ton of time to write, but and I think it was for a lot of people, but it just wasn't. I read a lot, but I couldn't
project.
I couldn't get it out.
Did you get a lot of ideas though while dealing with a lot of changes in the universe? Like,
I think eventually, like I tried to tuck some things away. I would take notes here and there, and I tried to document as much as I could. But it was like a time of frozenness and fear and kind of anxiety for a little while. And I think that like slowed the
machine
down.
Yeah. The machine was slowing down.
So hopefully I put enough away for later that it'll come back.
It will.
It'll come out. But at the time it just felt it was a time of kind of consumption, I think, more than output.
Yeah. Colleen, what is a good routine for a writer or for somebody that deals with, children, life, writing? Like, what is a good routine that helps you? Because it's routines is so important. Mm-hmm. I mean, does routine work? Like, does it or does it not?
It can. I mean, I love planning, and it feels very comforting to like plan in your calendar that you're going to write from 10 to noon or 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then you sit down and nothing comes. If you can, I think just giving yourself like chunks of time is always great. I've gone on writing retreats where you're gone for, a few days and you're isolated. Definitely put your phone down. The phone is our worst enemy when it comes to that. But some of my best stuff, like when my kids were younger and, you don't have a ton of time, but it's amazing what you can crank out in 15 minutes. Like conditions don't have to be perfect. I found to like get some of your best stuff. Of course, I heard that, Melville, who wrote Moby Dick, right, which is huge.
Yeah.
He said it would have been great if he had more time to write.
He said that.
Yeah. Everyone wishes they had more time to do it. So you have to work with what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the most fun things that I wrote was really just in a few minutes, either before I had to pick a kid up or in between dinner and bedtime, or don't ignore those little minutes that feel like throwaway minutes. You just never know. I mean, I do love the writers, and I admire them so much, who get up at, before everyone's up, and they write before the sun comes up. I've tried it. That's not for me, but I think there's probably something that works for everyone. And you have to try a lot of different things. You have to try to be that 5 a.m. writer, and you have to try to be the scheduled, disciplined writer. And try it for a while, and then try something else, and just keep trying different things. There is not one prescription.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
It has to, I feel like writing has to come from so inside. There's no way you can really prepare. But I was just wondering if there's a routine that kind of helps. But I guess it all has to come with what works for you individually, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, definitely being rested works, right? being
I mean, just personally, and this is from the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. She's one of the things she pushes forward, and this was years ago I read this book. Write daily, she calls them daily pages. And so I kind of started because I was curious, and God, it's been years. And I do, for me personally, 3 pages every single morning when I wake up, whether I'm on vacation or not, or sometimes in bed, sometimes at my desk, sometimes outside. But it is you get your brain working in a different way. Mm-hmm. Pen to paper is there's something about the connection between your brain and your hand that's different than typing this way than when you're writing it out. But you get, it's the thoughts that can get out. I mean, whether it's doubts that you have, whatever it is, you can just kind of release it before you start your day. And writing it, I think, is so powerful. Sometimes the words are silly, or they don't go together well, but it doesn't matter because no one's going to read them. You're not going to show these pages. I don't show the pages to anyone. Mm-hmm. And I would recommend it for anybody, whether you're a writer or a mathematician or a veteran. I mean, it's such a great release, and it's such a great way to connect with yourself. Sometimes I didn't even know what I was thinking until I would see it on the pages.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes it's a dream you had, or if you've read the news recently, or something that's just kind of eating away, or maybe you've been trying to figure out a problem that you've had, or right. in life. And then all of a sudden the solution just comes straight out of your pen. I mean, those are the best days. Not awesome. When you're just complaining about the weather, but that happens too. But wow. It's space for yourself. It's time for yourself. It takes about 25 minutes. And everyone has got 25 minutes somewhere that they can carve out just to connect with themselves. And you don't have to be a good writer. You don't have to be a great writer. You don't even really have to like writing. You just have to be okay with having that time to yourself. Writing just happens to be the tool, I think, that can help anybody connect with themselves.
I love that.
For me, I mean, people do a 5-minute journal, and that works. I mean, again, just like all the rest of it, do whatever you can. Do what is going to work for you. Yeah. I have some crazy tools on my phone that I have I think it's called the Forest app or something, where you say you want to plant a tree, and if you, and it's going to grow over an hour. And if you pick your phone up before the hour ends, you kill a tree.
Oh, that is a good one.
Like, I've resorted to like the most bizarre tools to just really try to keep. I mean, I know of writers who they'll work on a computer that doesn't attach to the internet.
Oh,
so you can't go down a rabbit hole. I mean, it's such a problem for like every writer I know and then you make the mistake of you look up one fact online, and it just takes you out of it. And it does it. Not only is it the comparison thing, but then you're like, your brain goes goes outside of the story. So I think that's one of the biggest problems we have is all these other voices are always right there.
It's so true. Do you feel like you are successful at teaching at least your kids this very special thing about what they're exposed to and how to keep themselves authentic? Because I have a son and he's a young adult too, and that has been, weird enough, one of my biggest thing being in this industry, that it also it's inevitable that you have to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
But I understand how important it is to pass that on, to keep yourself true and authentic to who you are. But I also see how his generation, it's so caught up into this, and that's all they know.
Yeah. And it's hard because I think there is a disconnect between us and them, because we can't relate to being their age and having the same pressures or accessibility to this kind of thing. So it is definitely harder to parent that. And I mean, we do the best we can. Mm-hmm. I think in just encouraging real human life connections as much as possible. And the boys are really good about that. They are like always out and about and doing real things, and, no phones at the dinner table. Just always like whoever's in front of you comes first.
Yes.
Yeah, we try to do that, but it's really hard to manage, because every resource they have, everything they do with school is on there. All of that's how you communicate now and with their friends, and you stay a part of what's going on through there. So it's, but we do talk about it a lot.
It's a thing. Yeah. It is a thing. And it's how to help. It's how to pass on certain tools that will help them not hit that wall, Because again, we're talking about this wall that we hit through stories or in our lives, like even choosing what you like to do, like you were one of these fortunates that were, exposed to a gift so early. But imagine being in your 20s and not just being so bombarded by so many voices and being connected to some of them, but you don't know the difference, or you don't understand really what's your calling in terms of like what connects you the most, because everything is so there.
Yeah.
I always find that people that discover what they love early, they have a sense of peace because they knew it as a child or as a young adult, and those voices were not like bombarding them as an adult. And it's important to, even if you're an adult and you're like in that process of discovering what it is you love, using this as really taking it seriously to be on your own and write about what feels right, it would really help you, right?
I think so. Yeah.
It's tough.
It is. And then, what you're saying is like, too, about kind of growing and finding these things as an adult. One of the things I've enjoyed most about aging is like being able to see, I have literally survived everything I've ever been through. Right. The experience, you're stuck today, but I've been stuck before.
Yeah.
So I don't have to panic. And that, you see the kids get stuck and they haven't been in a situation like that before. So they don't have that like luxury of knowing that it's going to be okay. To them, it feels like the end of the world is happening right now, but it's not. And
yes,
to not have to panic at every setback or every time you hit a wall is, it doesn't feel great, but you're going to get over it, or through it is better than over it. But
totally.
Yeah, it's like if worse comes to worse, you can sit back on the experiences that you've had being stuck.
And it's okay.
It's okay. Right? It's okay. It's not fun and you want to fix it and you want to be better next time, but you're really going to get through it.
Thank you for saying that. I feel like so many people need to hear this.
I think so too. Even watching them, like our boys play golf. Okay. And that is not a forgiving sport, but it gets them away from their phone. They're outside. They discovered it during the pandemic and they just love it. But oh my gosh, when you slump in golf, it's, it can, just like any sport, I guess, it determines whether you're having a good day or not.
Yes.
So they're getting the experience of, oh, guess what? I had a bad day today, but I had a great day yesterday. I know I can have another great day.
Yes. Yes. Being okay with that. It's I feel like having a mental, wall, like hitting a wall. It's not really the wall, it's how we handle it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
The wall is going to be there.
It is. And we keep talking about this wall and guess what? It's like, we feel it so deeply, but it really is in our imaginations.
It's completely here. There's not really a wall. It's not there. The computer is not like shutting down and you can't see what you wrote. It's an opportunity for you to like go and decompress and do something else because the wall is really not there. It's just time. Right. It's a thing. It's a thing that has to be rearranged in our heads.
Yeah, we can fix it.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, of course you can edit it and it's great. It's gonna be great. It's a thing that you, like you said, everything at the end is gonna work out. And our jobs are so intense now. Our lives are so high stakes with everything we do that we feel like we lost it. But in fact, we didn't. It's just a process. But we are so surrounded by things that doesn't supposed to fail because we don't see failing in the phone. We don't see nobody failing everywhere. Everything we see is like, everything is perfect. Mm-hmm. If we see people failing and saying that story, we will be okay with ours, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the vulnerable parts that people share is just such and not that you want to celebrate someone else's hard time. It's just it's such a great point of connection for us. Mm-hmm.
It's going back to you reading about writers that had a hard time. And it's going back to watching the actor studios of the hard times. I'm not going to fulfill my life with that, but the fact that it's there, it's like a tool.
Yeah.
Of like, if they overcame it, I could too.
Exactly.
And I do think that, this was an important conversation. I feel like people don't talk about this often. People just talk about how great things are all the time, which they could be great, but in order for things to go great, they have to be tricky. Mm-hmm. Greatness comes from, this messy stuff.
And I appreciate you having these conversations with people and hearing their stories and all the different ways they make a difference in their own lives and other people's lives. And it's just I know it's so inspiring.
Yeah.
For anyone who hears it.
For me was, and our conversation was, and that's why I wanted to just make it official for real. Yeah. And because, when people think of writers, they think they got everything together. When they when they read their books, they're like, oh my God, this person knew every page from the beginning to end. And the same thing with like anything that is good, people don't think that it was hard because it looks easy, Mm-hmm. So when you bring somebody to the table and it's like, hey, and you hear the real story, it's actually it makes you appreciate the book a lot more for what it took, I think.
Right.
So,
and I know I do when I hear other people's journeys of like either getting it published or getting it written or the life they led to, to get the story out or something like that. Oh, it adds so much depth and meaning to the entire experience for sure.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, let's talk about the behind the scenes of the wall. And let's break it down into what works and what doesn't. And whether is there a routine? There's not a routine. There's not a magic trick to this.
I wish there was.
The trick is to be resilient and just find your own, what works for you, right? Mm-hmm. Is every book different in terms of like discovering a better way to be productive? Or
I found it to be so. When especially with the first book about people feeling lonely, I was like in a small kind of space. And then another one I worked on is more about people's connections to each other. So that one was more fun to write in a public space. So a coffee shop or the library or something like that too. It's just a different vibe. I mean, it's a vibe. It's like the vibe of your environment really, I found affects. So yeah, I found it to be different with a lot of projects, just even where I want to be or what I wear, what music I listen to.
Interesting. And what are you, where can we find you? Like in your website, where the book, The Ifs, is something that is out now. And this is the one that is about teenagers dealing with social media kind of.
Yeah, teenagers who are now like kind of young adults out in the world and trying to figure out how to connect to each other without technology or without the benefit of social media. My website, ColleenWeems.com, and you can find the book online at booksellers. Yeah.
That's awesome. And that's where we can find the book and the whole thing. Yeah. That's exciting.
On the normal spots.
Magnificent. Colleen, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
It's like I told you, this is the point, is to be a conversation and just sharing your tools. Because I feel like we don't know we have them until we share them. And it's it's important to share them, because that's how you know that it really helps us too, to carry on with whatever next journey you're on with books or stories. And I really appreciate you stopping by and shared your walls and your struggles.
Thank you, Danay. Thank you. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate everything you do.
Yeah. Stay tuned, everybody. Colleen Weems is here. Thank you, and talk to you soon.